The F-22 has never lost an air-to-air engagement. The F-35 sees everything. American pilots train more than anyone on Earth, and there's one body of water where none of it matters. The Persian Gulf, where the best Air Force in history doesn't get to fight on its own terms. The reason isn't the enemy's jets, it's everything else. To understand why, you need to understand what the Gulf actually looks like from a cockpit. It stretches about 615 miles long and 210 miles across at its widest point. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow exit at the bottom, squeezes down to just 21 miles. The navigable shipping lanes are even tighter, 2 corridors barely 2 miles wide each. About 20% of the world's oil passes through that gap every day. Now here's what makes those numbers dangerous. American air doctrine is built around one core idea: standoff range. Detect first, shoot first, kill first, from a distance that keeps your pilot outside the enemy's weapons range. That's the entire logic behind the F-22, the F-35, the AIM-120 AMRAAM. Stay far away, see everything, and win before the other side knows you're there. But in a body of water 210 miles wide, there is no far away. A pilot flying down the middle of the Gulf is simultaneously inside the kill range of Iranian surface-to-air missiles on one side and Allied air defenses on the other. The S-300 system, operated by Iran, can reach over 200 kilometers. Their domestically built Bavar 373 can reportedly reach 300. By layering in medium-range systems like the Khordad-15, Iran achieves overlapping missile coverage across virtually the entire Gulf, with mobile launchers spread along 1,375 kilometers of coastline, every inch of airspace covered. Now, in a full-scale war, American pilots wouldn't just fly through those kill zones and accept the risk. The opening phase would focus on destroying those radars and launchers. That's what suppression missions and stealth aircraft exist for. But the Gulf isn't usually at war. It's in a permanent state of tension, where US jets fly daily patrols under peacetime rules of engagement. And in that reality, the missile coverage isn't something you suppress on day one. It's something you fly inside of, every single day, hoping nobody decides to turn it on. And then there's the heat. Summer temperatures in the Gulf regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, the air becomes so thin that a runway at sea level performs like a runway at 4,000 feet of altitude. Jet engines lose 15 to 20% of their rated thrust. Takeoff rolls extend by 40% or more. Rate of climb can drop by as much as 76%. A fully loaded fighter that takes off fine from a base in Nevada might not get airborne with the same weapons load from Al Dhafra in August. Pilots have to choose: less fuel or fewer weapons. You're going into a potential fight diminished before you've even left the ground. Built for dominance, launched at a disadvantage. The F-35 makes the contrast even more stark. The aircraft generates roughly 30 kilowatts of waste heat from its electronics, nearly double what the original design accounted for. The ship-based variants, the Marine Corps' F-35B and the Navy's F-35C, are the most exposed. In 2019, a combat-loaded F-35B aboard the USS Essex hit a threshold where the combination of Gulf heat, humidity, and weapons weight left the engine without enough thrust for a safe vertical landing. The temperature was around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. In South Carolina, that's summer. In the Gulf, it's a mild morning. Those same variants face restrictions on sustained afterburner use, approximately 80 seconds at Mach 1.3, because the heat blisters the stealth coatings on the tail. The most expensive fighter ever built, and the Gulf forces it to fly with a handicap. So that's the performance picture. Less thrust, fewer weapons, tighter restrictions. And no enemy has even done anything yet. But the heat isn't just degrading performance in the moment. It's destroying the machines over time. Sand ingestion causes roughly 11% power loss at full power. That's not a rounding error. That's the margin between catching an enemy aircraft in afterburner and watching it pull away. Fuel consumption jumps about 6%, which on a fighter with limited range means shorter missions or more tanker dependence. And the long-term damage is worse. During the 1991 Gulf War, engine maintenance intervals collapsed from 450 hours to 100. Some engine types achieved 1/30th of their designed service life. Engines built to last for years were burning out in weeks. Add Gulf humidity that exceeds 90% at night, mixed with salt air, and the corrosion eats airframes from the inside out, around the clock, whether the jet is flying or parked. The Gulf doesn't just make jets weaker, it ages them years in months. Reduced thrust, reduced weapons loads, reduced engine life, restricted performance envelopes. And you haven't even gotten to the hardest problem yet, figuring out who you're allowed to shoot. The Gulf might be the most dangerous airspace on Earth for a simple reason. Everyone looks alike. At least 8 air forces operate there simultaneously. Saudi Arabia flies over 200 F-15 variants. Qatar has 40 F-15 QAs. Kuwait operates 32 FA-18 Hornets. Bahrain and the UAE fly F-16s. All American-made jets flown by American allies, virtually identical on radar to American aircraft. Now here's what makes it terrifying. Iran still flies F-14 Tomcats, F-4 Phantoms, and F-5 Tigers, all originally American designs. Their radar signatures overlap with friendly platforms. Iran carries no NATO-compatible friend or foe identification system, so its aircraft show up as unknowns, not confirmed hostiles. An unknown is not the same as an enemy, but in a compressed airspace where reaction times are measured in seconds, that distinction can collapse. And when it does, people die. On July 3, 1988, the USS Vincennes, an Aegis cruiser with the most advanced radar system in the world, shot down Iran Air Flight 655, an Airbus A300, on a scheduled commercial route climbing through a civilian air corridor. All 290 people on board were killed, including 66 children. The Vincennes was simultaneously fighting Iranian speedboats when it happened. The crew was already under fire, adrenaline flooding the Combat Information Center. A military transponder code from an F-14 sitting on the ground at Bandar Abbas was incorrectly linked to the airborne contact. The tracking system reused a number, mixing Flight 655's data with a descending Navy jet elsewhere. Officers fell into what investigators later called scenario fulfillment, seeing what they expected instead of what was actually there. And here's the detail that makes this haunting. The USS Sides, 18 nautical miles away with the same data, correctly identified the aircraft as a commercial airliner. Same information, different conclusion. 290 people dead because of the wrong one. That disaster permanently reshaped how the US military operates in the Gulf. Positive identification requirements became far more demanding. Multiple independent sources, visual, electronic, intelligence, and air traffic control, became required before any engagement. The rules of engagement tightened dramatically. And they've stayed tight ever since, because the alternative is another Flight 655. But those same rules create a different danger. The tighter the rules, the longer a pilot waits before firing. And in the Gulf, time is the one thing geography doesn't give you. An Iranian anti-ship ballistic missile at Mach 3 crosses the strait in roughly 30 seconds. An Iranian fast attack boat at 50 knots reaches shipping lanes from Bandar Abbas in under 10 minutes. Built to be cautious, forced to be fast. The Gulf demands both and allows neither. Iran has built its entire military strategy around exploiting exactly that trap. Their approach isn't to match America's Air Force plane for plane. It's to make the Gulf itself into a weapon. The concept is called anti-access area denial. Cruise missiles that can reach over 1,000 kilometers. Anti-ship ballistic missiles, like the Khalij-e-Fars, which literally translates to Persian Gulf, carrying a 650-kilogram warhead at Mach 3 to 5, with guidance accurate enough to hit a moving ship. Over 1,500 fast attack craft, submarines designed specifically for the Gulf's shallow waters, and an estimated 2,000 naval mines. Every category of weapon optimized for one body of water. Not a military that fights jets, a military that fights geography. The scariest validation of this strategy came not in combat, but in a war game. In 2002, the Pentagon ran Millennium Challenge, the most expensive military exercise in history at the time. $250 million. A retired Marine Lieutenant General named Paul Van Riper played the Red Force commander, essentially an Iranian analog. He launched a saturation attack using cruise missiles from civilian boats, explosive-laden speedboats, and massed small craft against a carrier battle group entering the Gulf. 16 American warships sunk in simulation in under 10 minutes, including an aircraft carrier. The exercise was so embarrassing, it was paused and restarted with Van Riper's forces constrained. He went public, calling it rigged. But the core lesson hasn't gone away. Confined waters plus saturation tactics can overwhelm even the most advanced naval defenses on Earth. Iran proved the concept was more than theory on September 14, 2019, when 18 drones and 7 cruise missiles struck Saudi Aramco's Abqaiq facility, the most important oil installation on Earth. Despite Patriot batteries on site, not a single incoming weapon was intercepted. Low-flying drones exploited gaps in radar coverage designed for ballistic trajectories, not terrain-hugging threats. The attack knocked out 5.7 million barrels per day and triggered the largest single-day oil price spike in history. 4 months later, Iran fired 27 ballistic missiles at Al-Assad airbase in Iraq. Satellite imagery showed missiles hitting individual buildings. The commanding general estimated 100 to 150 Americans would have died without early warning. Despite initial reports of 0 casualties, 110 service members were later diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries. 0 casualties became 110. Precision that was supposed to be American turned out to be Iranian too. Every major U.S. base in the Gulf sits within range. Al Udeid in Qatar, roughly 300 kilometers from Iran, hosts the Combined Air Operations Center and over 100 aircraft, including F-22s, F-35s, and B-52s. Al Dhafra in the UAE, about 250 kilometers away. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, barely 200 kilometers across the water. These aren't mobile assets, they're fixed targets, and Iran has spent decades calculating exactly how to reach every one of them. And there's an irony here worth sitting with. The United States built these bases to project power against threats in the Gulf. Over time, the threat evolved to make the bases themselves the primary vulnerability. Think about what that means. The US military wrote the book on precision strike against fixed targets. It's what America did to Iraq in 1991, in 2003, and in every conflict since. And now, in the Gulf, America is on the other side of that equation. The most advanced air force in the world has parked its most valuable assets within range of the exact kind of attack it perfected. The Gulf didn't just limit American power, it quietly reversed who holds the geographic advantage. The US has adapted. Carriers rarely transit into the Gulf itself now, operating from the Arabian Sea and adding massive aerial refueling requirements. Distributed operations spread assets to avoid concentration. Patriot batteries and missile defense systems are layered across the region. Task Force 59 is pioneering unmanned surface vessels to extend surveillance without risking crewed ships. But these are all workarounds for the same fundamental problem. The Gulf is small. Iran sits on one side of it, and physics doesn't care how advanced your aircraft is. American fighter jets are the best in the world. That's not patriotism. That's an engineering fact backed by decades of combat results. But the Gulf is the one theater where geography most aggressively neutralizes what makes them the best, where reaction times compress to seconds, where every base is a fixed target, where extreme heat degrades the machines and the pilots inside them. The rules designed to prevent another Flight 655 mean you might not be cleared to shoot until the missile is already in the air. The most powerful air force on Earth is unable to operate independently in the Gulf. Iran can't build a jet that competes with the F-35, so they built a coastline that doesn't have to.